Hey guys, Marstingan here, bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so to celebrate the end of 2022, I am revisiting the top 10 units on global list. You guys will have probably seen I put out a video basically like this, just to look at what the top 10 landscape on global was, in my opinion, of course, before the release of Beast Gohan and Orange Piccolo. Of course, no one could have suspected how the table would have been changed. I think I even said in that video that a lot of us were obviously expecting Piccolo and Gohan to come out and basically be number 1 and number 2. Obviously, most people assuming Gohan would be number 1. And then, of course, the units came out. The initial reception was definitely very negative. I feel like, obviously, with Gohan, the more people have used him, people are sort of seeing the bright side to the unit a little bit. And of course, Piccolo, I mean, you guys have seen the posts, especially if you follow me on Twitter. The later part of this video is probably not going to be a surprise to a lot of people. So, I always say this at the beginning of tier list videos. I said it at the last one as well. And to be honest, you guys all did a great job, so well done. This top 10 is just my opinion. I give my reasons for my placements. If you don't agree, then that's obviously perfectly fine. Let me know down below in the comment section why you don't agree. I'm more than happy to discuss any of these placements with anybody. Just keep it civil and everyone be chill. Like I say, on the last video, everyone was cool, so that's always good to see. Maybe it is just Twitter where people get overly toxic about other people's opinions, I don't know. So, yeah, let me know down below your thoughts on my picks and let me know your top 10 list as well. So, a lot of this is obviously not going to have changed that much since the pre-Gohan and Piccolo list. Obviously, we are just inserting those two units in here. So some of the reasons for the placements are going to be the same, so this video won't be as long as the previous one, although I may spend some time at the end talking about why number 1 is number 1. So, we're going to start off with number 10, and that is the LR Super Saiyan 4s. As somebody who was a huge fan of this unit when they came out, it does pain me to have them at the bottom of the list. I think we are way past the point now where you can argue that the Gods and the Super Saiyan 4s are on the same spot. Or at least, like, you know, gods and then 4s. Because, I mean, we are literally in a celebration now where we've had two units. Because, spoiler alert, they're both on this list, right? So, we've had two top 10 units release that are both on movie heroes. And so the Gods team just constantly gets buffed over and over and over again. And these guys, I mean, one of the biggest buffs we were looking forward to this year was the Heroes celebration with the Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4s. But neither of the Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4s are on these guys' leader skill. If you run them together, Goku can't get his full passive because this guy isn't a Heroes unit or a full power unit. So you can only really run them with Vegeta. And then, of course, we didn't get Vegito, Limit Breaker Vegito, who would have been on their leader skill and potentially could have been a really big buff to their team. So the only way you can really have these two, like the 2 anniversary LRs on the same tier or like one after the other, is if you ignore the rest of the game exists and just rate them in a vacuum, because the two units are basically the same. And I still personally like the Super Saiyan 4s a little bit more if we're just evaluating them in a vacuum, but it doesn't work like that, right? The whole of the rest of the game exists. We've got to think about teams, links, all that kind of stuff. Like the Super Saiyan 4s not having prepared for battle hurts them quite a bit, because even on the other teams you could put them into, they're not going to be as good. They don't slot in as easily as the Gods do. So these guys are at number 10 for me. So following on with, similarly to the previous list, I have Metal Cooler above the Super Saiyan 4s, so now he is at number 9. The reason why I put him above the Super Saiyan 4s, I said this in the last video, when I'm making a Wicked Bloodline or like an STR Cooler team, this guy is an auto-include on the team. And this is what I said in the previous video, what team are you making where the Super Saiyan 4s are an auto-include on the team? Unless it's their team, obviously. Like none, right? Because like I say, with the Gods, you could slot them into a team that has a bunch of other units that have like prepared for battle, Super Saiyan, etc, etc, and they'll fit into that team reasonably well. But the Super Saiyan 4s won't necessarily, because they have shocking speed, which is kind of annoying. So the way I place this guy above them, I think he is super good, super useful. The Revive, I have mine Rainbow, full level 10 links, which I guess I should say, like, this list is obviously based on all the units being Rainbow. And I think he's really good. He can hold down slot 1 against everything except the hardest hitting like red zone boss super attacks, and then of course you just get his revive. He hits crazy high attack stats for how good he is defensively. He gives you a ton of healing, so he's just really, really good, and I would put him slightly above the 4s just because of their teams. If the 4s had the exact kind of support and teams and stuff as the gods, then I would put them over Metal Cooler. So now we come to our boy Gohan. Ultimate Gohan, brackets, beast kind of, is at number 8. Now, this might seem low, maybe. I guess to some people it might even seem high if you really think he's terrible. I struggled to put him higher on the list just based on how useful I think the units above him are and some of their perks over his abilities. So it is a bit disappointing that a unit that we were all hoping would come out and be the most hype, like best unit in the game, is at number 8 for me anyway. But he has a great leader skill. He gives most Hybrid Saiyans 200%. His biggest problem is his ki. I made a tweet the other day. Obviously, I'm going to probably spend a little bit more time in this video talking about the 2 new units, because if you really want more in-depth thoughts on the other units, you can watch that other video as well. But yeah, this guy, I made a tweet the other day. When he's good, he's really good. Like, if you get 24 ki, when he's fully built up after he's done his 5 super attacks, he's spitting out like 18 million attack, followed by 12 or 13, followed by another one that's like 13. He's effective against all types with 24 ki. If he gets a triple super turn, especially because, again, we're talking Rainbow level 10 links, he's over 1 million defense, which means he can tank super attacks. If you, even in Cell Max, because their team gets a boost of damage, you can actually get to the Tech Cell Max phase while Gohan and Piccolo still have their guard. So I've seen clips of Gohan after supering taking the super attack from Cell Max for like double-digit damage, because that's how built up he can get. Now, obviously, against some of the other bigger red zone bosses where you can't get to the final phase in turn 3, he's still going to have very good defense post-super. His guard will have run out. So the thing you have to remember is he is a slot 2 unit. Like, once his guard has run out, you do not put him in slot 1. And then once he gets his super attacks off, he does have a very high defense stat. But unfortunately, that does put him in the same boat as a lot of units coming out nowadays where, like, say, Metal Cooler Core, for example, if you get a double super with Gohan in slot 2, and then the Metal Cooler Core super attacks him, chances are you probably are still going to die. Even if the super attack doesn't one-shot you, it will do enough damage that you potentially don't survive the turn. And so a lot of people do find that disappointing, but he is a damage dealing unit. At the end of the day, he is a mini STR Cooler. At his peak, he can actually do more damage than Cooler because his 24 ki gets him effective against all types. So on his turn where he does the triple super, I think Cooler can match him if he does like the full 5 supers and they all crit. But this guy actually can put out insane damage. The biggest problem is I've had turns where I can't even get his 18 ki super, let alone get 20 ki for the additional and 24 ki for the effective against all types. And that is just such a huge fumble. His link set is his biggest problem, but I wouldn't be as bothered about his links and his difficulty to get ki if they hadn't locked so much of his ability behind the amount of ki that you get. Like, if a unit needs 20 or 24 ki, then they should be hitting at least 18 ki fairly easily. And how this guy has 1 extra ki per ki sphere obtained and still struggles to get 18 ki sometimes if the orb field lets you down. Like, that's because you can always plan ahead with orbs if the phase isn't going to end that turn. Whereas if you kill a boss and then you go into the next phase and Gohan's on that rotation, if you get a bad field of orbs, even with units on the rotation that give him ki support, you can struggle to get his 18 ki super, which is really, really unfortunate. And then the last thing that I know people are very disappointed about, the special beam cannon, because he doesn't stack attack at all, even when he's fully built up, the special beam cannon is not, you know, one of the craziest hitting active skills in the game, which I think that would probably like satiate a lot of people's complaints that Beast is only an active skill, because if it was only an active skill, but the active skill attack was doing like, you know, the highest active skill damage in the game, basically just finishing off like every boss or whatever, then I think people would be less disappointed. And as I said on Twitter the other day, I would even be perfectly happy with his active skill being harder to get if it was much, much better. Because remember, if you're running a full superheroes team, you can use his active skill on turn 3, which is actually really good. It's just the fact that if you do use it straight away on turn 3, chances are turn 1, even on his best turn, you got 3 supers, which means he's not fully built up. So if you're using his active skill straight away, it's obviously going to do less damage. But even when he is fully built up, it's nothing crazy. So it is a real shame how they handled this unit. Like I said, he has very high highs and very low lows. On the turns where he looks good, you could almost argue for him being top 5. But on the turns where he's bad, you could say he's not even top 10. Which is why he comes in for me at number 8. So, interested to know your guys' thoughts. I know a lot of people were blinded by their disappointment of Beast only being an active skill and massively underrated this guy. But the more I see him in-game, when he's good, he's really good. But when he's bad, oh boy, is he bad. So, let me know your thoughts, but Gohan is at number 8. So, at number 7, we have the gods. I already talked about this in the previous video. I think there is a small gap between the gods and the Super Saiyan 4s, thanks to the teams and the way the game's just set up, the way these guys just keep getting more and more support. So, in my previous list, the gap between the gods and the 4s was just Metal Cooler, but I do think you can argue Gohan over Metal Cooler. If you wanted to argue Metal Cooler below the 4s, but you still have Gohan in between, then I think that kind of makes sense. But I don't know. I would love for Gohan to be better than the gods. A lot of people, I feel like, recently have been overrating the gods. But the reason why I would put them over Gohan is, remember, this unit came out almost a year before him. But if you get 20 ki, they get a guaranteed additional super attack. Whereas Gohan only gets a great chance to do an additional. So I don't understand why they didn't just give Gohan guaranteed additional when a unit that is older than him, that also has the additional 1 ki per ki sphere obtained, has it as well, right? It's just so weird. And they have good links, so it's very easy for them to get 20 ki. So yeah, I really don't quite understand. Like, they actually get 2 ki extra for the first 7 turns. So it's so easy for them to get 20 ki, and theirs is guaranteed, whereas Gohan struggles to get to 20 ki, and then his additional super isn't even guaranteed. So Gohan at his highest can look better than the gods, but just on a consistent average, the gods will look better. And then when you transform with them, obviously not only do they do a lot of damage, they have the active skill, they action break on their 18 ki super, they get all this extra dodge, like, at their best, they can look better than Gohan consistently does. Gohan only really looks better than them when he is at his very best, which, unfortunately, due to his kit, can be very rare. So, next up we have the Gammas. Again, I put them above I put them in basically the same place on the previous list. Like I said in the other video, if you want to switch either of these guys around in placement, I'd be perfectly fine with that. Gamma 1 is more defensive based, which I feel like is probably more valuable nowadays. So if you're running Gohan and Piccolo's team and you have 1 slot free for the Gammas, maybe to use as like a floating unit or something, I would bring Gamma 1 over Gamma 2. He's providing all allies with 1 ki and 30% defense, whereas Gamma 2 gives extra attack. So, again, for harder events and stuff, if you're having a floating unit, a better defensive unit that's helping to buff everyone else's defense, I think is slightly better. But they are very, very close. So if you want to put 2 over 1, just because of his sheer damage output, then I would understand. But I put 1 slightly above number 2, just because of the defensive capabilities and support. So, then we get to the top 4. So this next 3 unit selection is the same as my previous video. These are the units that were considered the big 3. I guess a lot of people were calling them. I know that's a different thing. Like, it's, you know, it refers to certain anime. People always use it for the meme for the My Hero, for the big 3 as well. But these guys were referred to as the big 3 in the sense that a lot of people just kind of agreed that even if we disagreed about how you placed them, as long as you had these guys as the top 3 units in the game, then there was very little argument for that. So just like my previous list, I have Birdku, he's at 4, Cooler's at 3, and then Vegeta and Trunks are at 2. I think Vegeta and Trunks, I've personally never understood why people have Birdku over Vegeta and Trunks. They do basically everything he does, but slightly better. Except for the fact they don't have a revive. But I mean, they have an active skill that is a guaranteed crit, does a bunch of damage, their attacks for the rest of the turn are crits, and they buff all allies' defense. Goku's active skill, it might not even crit, because even after his post-revive, he only has a chance to crit built into his passive. So his active skill turn very often will do less damage than Vegeta and Trunks, especially because remember, he gets an attack buff after he takes the first hit and gets like attacks effective against all types and everything. So you have to use his active skill before he gets attacked, so he's not getting his full buffs or anything. I do think he's very good. Obviously, the arguments for people that put him over Vegeta and Trunks is that he's not locked to slot 1. His links are maybe slightly better for other teams that are just full of various different Super Saiyans with prepared for battle. But again, this top 3, you can kind of put them in any order. For me, Cooler, with his sheer ridiculous damage output, the fact that his defense can get incredibly high on the turn where he gets a bunch of super attacks. I've always, since their release, put him just over Birdcoo. But with all the buffs Movie Heroes is getting and stuff, again, I could almost see myself putting Cooler under Birdcoo now, but maybe it's just partially agenda keeping it up that Cooler is still, you know, one of the kings. But like I say, if you want to switch the order of these 3 units around, I would be perfectly fine with that. I think most people agree that they were the top 3 units in the game. And so, of course, that brings us finally to number 1. And yes, here he is. Exploding Latent Power, Piccolo Power Awakening, aka Orange Piccolo. It is insane to me that we live in a world where Piccolo is the best unit in the game. But, I mean, talk about deserved. Piccolo has been a fan favourite character for a very long time. I know he's Mrs. Ningen's favourite Dragon Ball character. And he just blows me away with how good he is. I think people, when we first read his kit on paper, didn't realise quite how crazy he was. But there's a screenshot that somebody posted, or somebody mentioned it in a comment section, and I posted the screenshot. My face when I was doing the 55% showcase, and we had this guy's second appearance, so turn 3, and he had like 750k defense. Now, obviously that is with the intro animation buff, but that's also with 20% damage reduction and guard on turn 3. So basically, this last part of the video, I'm going to explain why Piccolo is number 1, and if you think anyone else is above Piccolo, you're just wrong, essentially, in the kindest way of saying you're just wrong. Because if we talk about, so Vegeta and Trunks were a lot of people's previous number 1. Piccolo builds up his defense faster than they do, so again, on turn 3, or if turn 4, if he was on, you know, turn 2 as his first appearance, his defense is going to be higher than theirs. Now, when his intro animation thing runs out, if you haven't been hit the full 5 times, his defense could potentially be slightly lower than theirs on turn 5. And the major difference is they have guard, which obviously as long as you keep them in slot 1, they have it forever. Whereas when his buff runs out, he no longer has guard, but he has 20% damage reduction, which of course, I'm not even going to talk about this last part until a bit later, but 20% damage reduction and then still having like 500k plus defense when that intro animation buff has run out is ridiculously good. Now, you can argue Vegeta and Trunks better defensively than him on turn 5 once his intro animation buff runs out, but that's defense, right? So turn 1 and turn 3, he's better than them defensively. Then let's talk about his offense. So he builds up by getting hit. So if you put him in slot 1 and you're going up against a boss where there's like 2 or 3, sometimes even 4 or 5 attacks in slot 1 before he attacks, his attack stat on turn 1, like Vegeta and Trunks can't reach that in their dreams. Like they can't do those attack stats on turn like 6 or 7, let alone on turn 1. Now obviously it is based on getting hit by the enemy. But when he's fully built up, when he's taken his 5 hits, he is doing attack stats that Vegeta and Trunks basically just cannot do, while at the same time having similar defense to them. Even like I say, if you want to say Vegeta and Trunks are better defensively once Piccolo's extra buff has run out, they're only slightly better defensively, whereas he is way above them in terms of offense. So that is really, really good. One other thing I really like about him that I think people underrate quite a lot is this bit right here. All allies key +2 within the same turn after receiving an attack. This is actually a really powerful ability, and I mentioned it in a video yesterday that it helps out units like Gohan who struggles for ki, that if this guy gets hit first at the start of the turn, he's giving everybody else an extra 2 ki, which potentially could be the difference between Gohan actually getting to 20 ki or not. and of course it helps out everybody else. I feel like it's a nice little bonus that can make up for his Link set, because obviously you can argue by not having a Saiyan Link set, his Links are not as good as Vegeta and Trunks. But I've seen this guy outperform Vegeta and Trunks offensively on a turn where he literally only has Fierce Battle active. So he is absolutely insane. And then let's talk about this last bit. So if you drop to 30% or less HP after you've received 7 attacks, you get a full heal, and then he gets an extra 30% damage reduction for the rest of the fight. So that's putting him at 50% damage reduction on a unit that post super attack, when he's fully built up, can get up to like 1,000,000 defense. That's pretty insane. Like, if you get that Senzu Bean active skill, not active skill, passive ability to go off, he essentially becomes like unkillable. Now, I place him at number 1 even without that ability, because I didn't even get this to go off for the first time until a video that I did the other day, and I was already blown away by how good this guy is. So he is just absolutely insane. And then the final nail in the coffin, we talked about Vegeta and Trunks' active skill briefly when comparing him to Birdcoo, but now let's look at the orange Piccolo giant form, by far the best giant form / rage mode in the entire game. He greatly raises attack temporarily, does destructive damage, and then massively raises attack temporarily on the 18 key. He gets 2 extra key per key sphere obtained. So obviously with giant form characters, they get no links, so he only starts the turn at 6 key. Very easy to get his 18 key super unless the orb field screws you over. And then he has the passive ability to launch an additional attack that has a medium chance to become a super. So that means he always gets an additional normal attack. It could be a super, and then if you have a decent amount of additional in the hidden potential, you can very often trigger that 3rd attack as well. So on his best turn, he's doing 9 super attacks in that giant form turn. Now, you very often get, well, most often, you get 2 turns, so that's 18 potential super attacks, and his giant form can last for 3 turns, so that's a potential of 27 super attacks that he's going to be doing while you take 0 damage. So his giant form can actually solo red zone bosses. And then, of course, if you're running double Piccolo, when his giant form runs out, you then only have to survive that turn, then you get the next Piccolo on the next turn, and you do it again. So he is just absolutely insane. Like, even like without the active skill, I think he has an argument to be number 1, but the active skill is just the icing on the cake. Like, it does so much damage. You know, you go up against bosses like Red Zone Broly, you can just pop the transformation when you get to the AoE phase, and you don't have to worry about getting AoE'd into oblivion. Like, this guy, I just cannot stress enough. In terms of like how I would rate the top 4 now, which is these guys, there is Piccolo, then there is, in my opinion, actually a small gap, and then we have the big 3, then there's another small gap, and then we have everybody else. That is the way I see the top 10. So if I change the view here a little bit, here's the actual list itself. But there you go. That is the top 10 units on Global at the end of 2022, in my opinion. Like I said at the beginning, if you disagree, I can certainly see arguments for some of the units being swapped around. But for me, Piccolo just is number 1. Hopefully I addressed any of the arguments in this video, but if you have any reasons why you think any of the units on the list, I mean, mostly it'll be 2, 3, and 4, right? But any units on this list that you think are better than Piccolo, let me know in the comment section why you think they are better than him, and I will let you know my reasons for why I think he is, in fact, better than them. So, there you go. That's the end of 2022, top 10 units on Global list. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section, and let me know what your top 10 list will look like. So, I hope you all have a good New Year's. Unfortunately for me, I am at work. I'm working a night shift, so I literally will be at work when it becomes 2023. So, yeah, let me know. Give me some good comments, and if you don't follow me on Twitter, do so already, because I'm probably going to be very bored at work and just sat on Twitter. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section and over there, and I hope you all have a very great 2023. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Master Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.